Silencio. Hi there, this is Solitary Ronin from Solitary Ronin Films, and welcome to another Top 10 collection. This is a Top 10 David Lynch, and there is no doubt that owls will have something to say about it. Now, a quick disclaimer. Numbers 10, 9 and 8, I haven't... Well, that's a lie. Number 9 and 8, I haven't seen as many times as certainly 1 to 7. So I can't really give too deep an analysis of them. One of them I haven't seen for a while and I really need to rewatch. And the other one I really need to rewatch. Because the first time I watched it, wasn't that impressed, so I really need to give it more time. So without further ado, let us start Top 10 David Lynch films. So number 10 is Dune, which probably, as most of the people who'll be watching this know, it's the least David Lynch film on the list. This is his probably most expensive film. I could be wrong, but probably. It was a big studio feature. It was Dino De Laurentiis. And anybody who knows anything about films, we could do a whole video about Dino De Laurentiis. This obviously is an important film in the sense it probably focused David Lynch's mind on not doing studio films after it. I mean, it's not his best film by a long shot. It's a bit of a mess at times. It does have Max von Sydow in it, so you can't shake a stick at that. But whenever I see David Lynch's Dune, no matter how much I love David Lynch, I just wish we would have seen the Jodorowsky version of Dune. I haven't actually seen the documentary about the Jodorowsky Dune, but he wanted Salvador Dali, he wanted Orson Welles to be in it. That would have been some film. This, I guess, is kind of okay Sunday afternoon fare, but it's certainly not the David Lynch we all know and mostly love. But it's an important film in the sense that if this had been a huge success and he had enjoyed the process, who knows what kind of films David Lynch would have done. So that's number 10. Number 9 is The Elephant Man, which again, I'll be perfectly honest and say I haven't seen for a long time. I only bought it on Blu-ray quite recently, and I really need to watch it again, so I'm not going to make too many judgments on it. Apart from obviously it does look beautiful in the black and white, and it's got Anthony Hopkins and John Hurt with perhaps a career-defining performance. But I may review this down the road sometime, because it would be unfair of me to make too many comments about it just because I haven't seen it for so long. So that's number 9, The Elephant Man. Number 8 is a completely different beast, and this is Inland Empire, which is 3 hours long. It's shot on digital, and I need to watch it again. First impressions was not great. Again, moments of Lynchian genius, but other moments of just self-indulgence. Some terrifying moments, some funny moments. But I guess, in a sense, this is what David Lynch is all about, because he is one of the few filmmakers that you genuinely don't have a clue what's going to happen in his films. And in this day and age, that is so rare, and you have to give him credit for that, even if at times he kind of reaches into the depths of self-parody at times. He is one of the few filmmakers left that is genuinely guided by a muse. He generally knows the music for his films before he's written a word, which is kind of unique. So I really need to check this out. I don't want to say too much about it because it would be unfair. I really need to check it out again. Now the rest of the films I have seen, and I have seen a lot. So this is Wild at Heart. This is number 7. Again, not my favourite David Lynch. It's not a David Lynch that I watch that often, but again, it has fantastic moments mixed in with strong sex scenes, strong violence, a wonderful performance by Willem Dafoe, and the kind of overrunning theme of The Wizard of Oz. Make of that what you will. Is this Lynch's most romantic film? It might be. I believe this won at Cannes, or it certainly got a prize at Cannes. It is an entertaining film, but like I said, it's not the one that I reach for immediately when I want to watch a David Lynch film, and that's maybe why it's number 7. But it's still a great wee film, 4 out of 5. The next one almost needs no introduction, but I'll introduce it anyway. It's Eraserhead, and again, if I ever do a top 10 what did I just see films, Eraserhead's in the top 10, there's no doubt. It is one of those films that after you've watched it, you probably will have dreams about, and you will actually question how much of the film you dreamt and how much of the film is actually real, especially if you go a couple of years without watching it. It is a great example of what you can do with not a lot of money if you have an imagination. Again, it can be read as about fatherhood, about commitment, about the creative process, or maybe it's just about a lady in a radiator with big cheeks. But it's certainly one seen, never forgotten, and again, there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with the fact that on first blush you might think it doesn't make a lot of sense, or David Lynch is just making it up as he goes along, but it is actually constructed really well and in detail. And again, on the Blu-ray it is beautiful in black and white, and again, it's perhaps not the first David Lynch film I would recommend to people, but it is an experience, and yeah, watch it in the middle of the night and then see if you can sleep afterwards. Eraserhead. And number 5 is Lost Highway. Now, to me, very much like the main character, this is split into 2 halves. The first half is arguably amongst the best stuff David Lynch has ever done. It's creepy and disturbing, especially the performance of Robert Blake. Lynch really uses, in all David Lynch films he uses sound brilliantly, but in this one especially, the score, which Trent Reznor from Nine Inch Nails created, and also just the use of sound. There's beautiful shots as Bill Pullman is slowly wandering round his house, and David Lynch opens up the frame and it's just darkness. And obviously conventionally in films, when a director opens up the frame, something usually comes out of the frame, but in this case nothing comes out of the frame, which makes it even more disturbing. So the first 45-50 minutes is just a really fantastic exhibition of sound and kind of subverting the audience's expectations. The second half is entertaining, but it's also slightly creeping into self-parody at times. But then just when you think he's kind of lost his way on the highway, strangely enough, he pulls it back together, and it really has a solid last 15 minutes. So it's kind of, I mean, I would give it a 4 out of 5. It is a film of two halves, but then because of the story, maybe that's a fair actual assessment of what it actually is, if that makes any sense, which it probably doesn't. So number 5 is Lost Highway. Number 4, which might be low on some people's lists, is Mulholland Drive. This is the Studio Canal Blu-ray, which is quite a nice little book type edition. This is a great film. From now on in, this is 5 stars out of 5 stars. Again, you could argue it throws up more questions than answers, but it's art, so it's not really a problem. One of the many things I love about David Lynch is the fact he doesn't explain everything, which again, I hate to bash Hollywood again, but in general Hollywood films have to explain everything, and if they don't explain everything, people get scared and confused. But Lynch understands in life things aren't explained. In life we don't get answers, we just get questions. We don't get resolution very often. And again, this is a beautiful film about identity, finding yourself, and it's just beautiful. It looks amazing, sounds amazing, and the last 15 minutes are absolutely brilliant, and answers on a postcard if you understand what it means. But I kind of believe that the key is you don't have to understand what it means. You don't have to understand what it's about. You just go with the flow and experience it, because that's kind of what David Lynch films are. But this is a fantastic film, Mulholland Drive, at number 4. Controversially, it's The Straight Story at number 3. Not controversially, because it's a brilliant film, but it might be a little bit high on my list compared to other people's lists. Now this is a Spanish Blu-ray. I can't seem to find it on an English language Blu-ray. This is a Film 4 production, I believe, and it's kind of the only David Lynch film that you can't get on Blu-ray in either Region B or Region A. Again, I might be wrong. This is a Spanish edition, which you can't remove the Spanish subtitles, but you can just move them down off the screen. But the print's beautiful, and it's just a beautiful film. Again, in the hands of somebody else, it would just be a sentimental TV movie of the week about an old guy crossing the country to meet his dying brother. But with Lynch, it's moving without being sentimental. It was actually written by Mary Sweeney, David Lynch's regular editor, and it's a simple story, but it's told beautifully. You care about the characters, and again, he doesn't make it sentimental. He manages to make it moving without being sentimental and crass, which is a trick unto itself. A lot of people said when it came out, you know, it's unusual for a David Lynch film. It doesn't have, you know, sex and violence in it. But David Lynch is never really about sex and violence. He's kind of about how sex and violence changes people and affects people and drives people. He is a very humanistic director, even though it might not seem that way. I think I could be wrong, please let me know in the comments. But this is a straight story. It's a great wee film. Richard Farnsworth, I believe, was up for the Oscar, but didn't win it. I could be wrong, which is just ridiculous. That's almost as ridiculous as Jack Lemmon not winning the Oscar for Glengarry Glen Ross, just because he swears a bit in it. But anyway, Straight Story, number 3 on my top 10 David Lynch films. Number 2, Twin Peaks, Fire Walk With Me. Now, this is a film that almost ended David Lynch's career because he was lambasted so much by critics. But what do critics know? People who watched the TV show, who weren't used to David Lynch as a cinematic director, as a theatrical director. Some people were shocked by how disturbing and strange this was, even though for David Lynch fans, the first time I saw this I just thought it was amazing, and I still think it's amazing, and in the end it's actually quite moving. The final scene is actually quite moving to me. Maybe I'm just weird. Again, just a beautiful film, sounds great, looks great. Again, it's funny because obviously we kind of know what's going to happen because we've seen the TV show, but even that, there's still twists and surprises. It's still a great journey, even though it's a journey into darkness and terror, and it's just a masterpiece. The score's brilliant as usual. It's Angelo Badalamenti who did most of David Lynch's soundtracks. I would recommend pretty much getting any David Lynch soundtrack, especially the Straight Story is beautiful. Lost Highway, as I mentioned earlier, by Trent Reznor, and this is just a lush, beautiful score by Angelo Badalamenti. So this is number 2, Twin Peaks, Fire Walk With Me. So strangely enough, my favourite David Lynch film is Blue Velvet. Now, every cinephile should have seen this or own it, unless you can't stand David Lynch, obviously. I believe this might actually be the first David Lynch film I saw, even though there's a good chance Dune might have actually been the first David Lynch film I saw. I mean, this is just amazing. This is 1986, I believe, so it's now 32 years old, and it's still as shocking and disturbing and crazily beautiful as ever. Like the man said, yep, that's a human ear. Again, it kind of started and really shows off Cronenberg. I do apologise. David Lynch, one of his strengths is making, the extraordinary seem ordinary and the ordinary seem extraordinary. So it makes weird behaviour seem normal and normal behaviour seem weird. So even from the opening shots of the picket fences and the fire engine driving by with the fireman waving, something's up, and then he goes under the grass and you'd hear the creeping and the crawling of insects. It's just an amazing film. Again, it's about innocence lost. It's about the underbelly of what we accept to be normal society. But again, he shows there's something else going on underneath. Obviously, Dennis Hopper's performance, Isabella Rossellini with a really brave performance. I'm not sure how many actors would go through that and would expose themselves in that way. Kyle MacLachlan, who would become kind of a cipher for David Lynch, because he did say that Bill Pullman's character in Lost Highway was essentially Kyle MacLachlan's character in Blue Velvet grown up as an adult. It's just a great film. Again, great score, great soundtrack, Roy Orbison's In Dreams is a classic scene when it's sung by a character in the film. Again, recommend the soundtrack. Angelo Badalamenti again does fantastic work, and yeah, can't really say much more. Recommend this any more highly. Obviously it's strong stuff, it's an 18 for a reason, but if you have a strong disposition, then I recommend this wholeheartedly. So that's the top 10 David Lynch films. I hope you enjoyed that. Please leave a like, subscribe to the channel if you want to see more videos, or leave comments down below, suggestions for your top 10 David Lynch films. And I wish you well, and this is the Solitary Ronin saying good night.